The dust-laden wind swept across Amelia Morgan's face as she stood at the doorway of her humble bakery, watching yet another potential customer walk away without buying a single loaf of her bread. The small frontier town of Pendleton, Oregon, in 1878 was hardly the place a city-bred woman like her had imagined ending up. But life had a way of upending even the most carefully laid plans. "I can't afford to waste coin on fancy bread that might not even be edible," the woman had said, eyeing Amelia's uniquely crafted sourdough with suspicion before leaving. Amelia wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron and sighed. 6 months had passed since she'd opened Morgan's bakery, investing every last penny of her inheritance following her parents' passing. The townspeople of Pendleton preferred the simple, predictable loaves from Wilkins' General Store plain, uninspired fare that had sustained the town for years before her arrival. "They simply don't understand," Amelia murmured to herself, returning to her small kitchen where 3 fresh loaves cooled on the rack bread that would likely join yesterday's unsold batch. Her techniques, learned from European bakers during her family's travels years ago, produced bread with a complexity of flavor and texture that Pendleton's residents apparently weren't ready for. The bell above her door jingled, and Amelia quickly composed herself, plastering on a hopeful smile. The familiar clinking of spurs announced the arrival before she even turned around. "Afternoon, Miss Morgan," came a deep voice. Amelia's smile warmed genuinely at the sight of Kyle Evans, one of the few friendly faces she'd encountered since arriving in Pendleton. He worked at the Maxwell Ranch outside of town, and though they'd only exchanged pleasantries on his infrequent visits to town, his kind demeanor was a welcome respite from the cool reception she typically received. "Mr. Evans, what brings you to town today?" she asked, noting his trail-worn appearance. Dust covered his denim pants and faded blue shirt, and his dark brown hair was pushed back beneath a well-worn hat. "Cattle business with Mr. Holbrook," he replied, removing his hat and holding it respectfully. His blue eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "And I recall passing your bakery last time, but didn't have a chance to stop in." Amelia nodded, trying not to appear too eager for a potential customer. "Can I interest you in some bread? I've just finished baking." Kyle's gaze moved to the cooling racks behind her. "Those look nothing like what they sell at Wilkins." "No," Amelia admitted. "They're quite different. I use old-world techniques, fermentation processes that develop flavor over time." She hesitated, then added, "Though I'm finding Pendleton might prefer simpler fare." Kyle approached the counter, studying the artfully scored loaves with their caramelized crusts. "Mind if I try a piece? Rode since dawn and missed breakfast." Amelia quickly cut a thick slice from one of the loaves, the crackling crust giving way to an airy, open crumb structure with a slight translucence that spoke of proper fermentation. She handed it to him, trying not to hold her breath as he took a bite. Too many times she'd watched people take tentative tastes only to politely decline purchasing anything. Kyle chewed thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. Then something changed in his eyes. He took another, larger bite, and a smile spread across his face. "Miss Morgan," he said after swallowing, "this is the finest bread I've ever tasted." Amelia blinked in surprise. "You truly think so?" "I grew up outside of San Francisco," he explained. "My mother was from France, and she used to make bread that reminded me of home." "This," he held up the remaining piece, "this takes me right back to her kitchen." Warmth bloomed in Amelia's chest at his words. "That's the greatest compliment anyone could give, Mr. Evans." "Kyle," he corrected with a smile, "and I'll take 2 loaves if you please." As Amelia wrapped his purchase, Kyle leaned against the counter observing the empty shop. Business seems quiet. Honestly, you're my first customer today, she admitted, securing the loaves with twine. The people here don't know what they're missing, he said, handing over coins for the bread. Too set in their ways, I reckon. That's kind of you to say. Kyle lingered after the transaction, seemingly reluctant to leave. How long have you been in Pendleton? 6 months, Amelia answered. I came west after my parents passed. They left me enough to start fresh, and I've always loved baking. She gestured around the small shop. Though I'm beginning to think I should have chosen a different town. Don't give up just yet, Kyle said, placing his hat back on his head. People around here take time to accept new things, but once they do, they're loyal to the bone. After Kyle left, Amelia found herself thinking about him throughout the afternoon, even as she closed up shop without another customer. His appreciation of her bread had been a small ray of hope in what had otherwise been a discouraging day. That evening, as she sat alone in her small living quarters behind the bakery, Amelia calculated her dwindling funds. 2 more months, perhaps 3 if she was extremely frugal, before she would have to admit defeat. The thought of returning east, tail between her legs, was almost unbearable. Morning came with the roosters, as it always did in Pendleton. Amelia rose before dawn, stoking the brick oven she'd insisted on having built when she purchased the space. The physical labor of baking, mixing, kneading, shaping had always been therapeutic for her, and today was no different. By mid-morning, she had prepared her dough and was waiting for it to prove when the bell above her door chimed. To her surprise, Kyle Evans entered, looking more presentable than the day before, his dark hair still damp from what must have been a recent bath. "Good morning, Miss Morgan," he greeted, hat in hand. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," she replied, wondering what brought him back so soon. "Did you enjoy the bread?" "So much that I couldn't stop thinking about it," he admitted with a smile. "And I had an idea that kept me awake half the night." Amelia raised an eyebrow. "An idea?" Kyle stepped further into the shop, his expression earnest. "The problem isn't your bread, Miss Morgan. It's that people don't understand it. They need education, a chance to experience what makes it special." "I've tried explaining," she said, gesturing to the small chalkboard where she'd written descriptions of her sourdough process. "Words don't do it justice. They need to taste it," Kyle insisted. "And I think I know how to make that happen." He explained that the annual Pendleton Harvest Festival was coming up in 2 weeks, an event that brought in folks from neighboring towns and ranches. "What if," he proposed, "you offered free samples during the festival? Small enough that it wouldn't cost you much, but enough to let people taste what they're missing." Amelia considered this. It could work, but she hesitated. "I barely have enough customers to sustain myself until then." Kyle's expression turned thoughtful. "The hands at Maxwell Ranch would appreciate something better than biscuits and hardtack. If I brought a standing order for the bunkhouse, would that help?" "It would help tremendously," Amelia admitted, touched by his offer. "Then consider it done. 20 loaves a week, delivered each Monday." He extended his hand to seal the deal. Amelia shook it, noting the calluses that spoke of hard work and the surprising gentleness of his grip. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Evans?" "Kyle," he reminded her with a smile. "And I'm doing it because talent shouldn't go unrecognized. Plus, selfishly, I want to ensure I can keep eating your bread." Over the next 2 weeks, Amelia saw Kyle every few days when he came to collect bread for the ranch. Their conversations grew longer with each visit, and she found herself looking forward to his arrivals. She learned he was 32, had been working with cattle since he was 16, and had a natural way with horses that made him valuable to the Maxwell operation. In turn, she shared stories of her childhood in Boston, Her parents' love of travel that had exposed her to European baking traditions, and her dream of someday having a bakery where people lined up before dawn for her bread. The day before the harvest festival, Kyle arrived with a wagon rather than on horseback. "I thought you might need help transporting everything tomorrow," he explained, following her into the kitchen where she was preparing extra dough for the festival. "That's very thoughtful," Amelia said, surprised by the gesture. "I was wondering how I'd manage it all." Kyle watched as she worked the dough with practiced movements. "May I ask what makes your bread different, besides the taste, I mean?" Amelia smiled, always eager to talk about her craft. "It's the fermentation. Most bakers use commercial yeast for a quick rise, but I maintain a sourdough starter, a living culture of wild yeasts and bacteria." She pointed to a crock on a shelf. "That starter is over 5 years old. I brought it all the way from Boston." "Like a pet," Kyle observed with amusement. "Exactly. It needs regular feeding and care." She continued shaping loaves as she explained. "The long, slow fermentation develops complex flavors and makes the bread more digestible. It's how bread was made for thousands of years before commercial yeast." Kyle's interest seemed genuine, and Amelia found herself sharing more technical details than she'd ever been able to with anyone in Pendleton. When she finally paused, realizing she'd been talking nonstop, he was smiling at her with a warmth that made her cheeks flush. "I apologize for rambling," she said. "Don't," he replied. "It's refreshing to hear someone so passionate about their craft. Most people I know just do what needs doing, not what they love." The harvest festival dawned bright and clear. Kyle arrived at dawn as promised, helping Amelia load the wagon with her portable display. Dozens of sample-sized pieces of different breads, and several full loaves for anyone interested in purchasing. The town square was already bustling when they arrived, farmers and ranchers setting up stalls to display their best produce and livestock. Amelia felt a flutter of nerves as Kyle helped her set up a small table with a cheerful checkered cloth. "What if no one likes it?" she whispered. "They will," Kyle assured her, arranging the samples on platters. "And if they don't, their loss. But they will." His confidence bolstered her spirits, and soon they were ready for the crowds. At first, people passed by with only cursory glances, but Kyle began actively inviting passers-by to try a sample. "Best bread west of the Mississippi," he called out. "Miss Morgan uses techniques from the old countries that bring flavors you've never experienced." His enthusiasm was contagious, and soon people began stopping, curious enough to try a small piece. The reactions were mixed. Some merely nodded politely, but others showed genuine surprise and delight. "This isn't like any bread I've had before," remarked Mrs. Peterson, the schoolteacher. "It has such depth of flavor." Sheriff Collins took a piece and chewed thoughtfully. "Reminds me of bread my grandmother made back in Pennsylvania. She'd let the dough sit overnight too." By midday, Amelia had sold several loaves and was feeling cautiously optimistic. Kyle stayed by her side throughout, sharing the story of his first taste of her bread with anyone who would listen. His presence beside her felt natural, as if they'd been partners for years, rather than acquaintances of just a few weeks. During a lull in visitors, he leaned against the table beside her. "You're winning them over," he observed with a smile. "Thanks to you," Amelia replied. "I wouldn't have thought to do this without your suggestion." "I just provided the idea. Your bread is doing the real convincing." As the festival continued into the afternoon, Mayor Hartwell approached their table. A portly man with a handlebar mustache, he was known for his business acumen, owning several properties in town. "Miss Morgan," he greeted, "I've been hearing quite a buzz about your bread today." "Would you care to try some, Mayor?" she offered, presenting a plate of samples. The mayor selected a piece and tasted it, his eyebrows rising in appreciation. "Well now, that is something special. You know, I've been to San Francisco and tasted what they call French-style bread there. This rivals it." "Thank you, sir," Amelia said, unable to hide her pleasure at the compliment. "I understand your shop hasn't been drawing many customers," the mayor continued. "That's a shame. Pendleton could use more refined offerings as we grow." Kyle stepped forward. "Mayor Hartwell, Miss Morgan's bread deserves a proper showcase. The current location is too far from the main street to attract regular foot traffic." The mayor tugged at his mustache thoughtfully. "You make a valid point, young man. Real estate is my specialty, after all." He turned back to Amelia. "Perhaps we could discuss a more suitable location for your enterprise, Miss Morgan. I have a vacant storefront on Main Street that might serve your purposes better." Amelia's heart sank. "I appreciate the offer, Mayor Hartwell, but I've invested everything in my current space. I couldn't possibly afford to relocate and refit another building." Before the mayor could respond, Kyle spoke up. "What if the building were already properly outfitted for a bakery, with a proper oven and everything needed?" Both Amelia and the mayor looked at him in surprise. "And who would finance such an undertaking?" the mayor asked, intrigued. "I would," Kyle said firmly. "I believe in Miss Morgan's talent, and I believe Pendleton would be poorer without her bread. I have savings, and I'm willing to invest." Amelia stared at him, speechless. They'd known each other for barely 2 weeks, and here he was offering to finance a new bakery for her. Mayor Hartwell looked between them, a knowing smile spreading beneath his mustache. "Well, well. I'd be happy to discuss terms whenever you're ready, Mr. Evans. For now, I believe I'll purchase 2 loaves of this excellent bread to take home to Mrs. Hartwell." After the mayor left with his purchase, Amelia turned to Kyle. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," he replied. "I have money saved more than most would expect from a ranch hand. My parents left me a decent inheritance that I've barely touched, living simply as I do." "But why would you do this for me?" Amelia asked, bewildered by his offer. Kyle looked at her directly, his blue eyes earnest. "Because I recognize something special when I see it or taste it. Your bread isn't just food, Amelia. It's art, it's heritage, it's—" He paused, searching for words. "It's something that makes life richer. People here deserve that, even if they don't know it yet." Amelia felt tears pricking at her eyes, moved by his passionate defense of her work. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it," Kyle replied. "That's all I ask for now." By the end of the festival, Amelia had sold every loaf she'd brought and collected a list of people interested in placing orders. The day had exceeded her wildest expectations, and she couldn't help but attribute much of the success to Kyle's unwavering support. As they loaded the empty platters back into the wagon at dusk, Amelia made her decision. "I'll consider your offer, Kyle, but I need to know exactly what you're proposing." Kyle nodded, helping her up onto the wagon seat before climbing up beside her. "Fair enough. How about I explain over dinner tomorrow?" "My treat at the hotel restaurant," Amelia smiled. "I'd like that." The following evening, Amelia took extra care with her appearance, selecting her best dress, a deep blue that complemented her eyes, and arranging her auburn hair in a style more elaborate than her usual practical bun. She told herself it was because they would be discussing business in a public setting, but in her heart, she knew there was more to it. The Pendleton Hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in town, with white tablecloths and actual wine glasses, a luxury in a frontier town. Kyle was waiting when she arrived, looking handsome in a clean shirt and vest, his usually unruly hair combed neatly. He stood as she approached, pulling out her chair. "You look beautiful, Amelia," he said, using her first name naturally as if they'd progressed beyond formalities. "Thank you," she replied, settling into her seat. "This is quite the venue for a business discussion." "Perhaps it's not only business I had in mind," Kyle admitted with a smile that sent a flutter through her chest. After they ordered, Kyle outlined his proposal. The storefront the mayor mentioned is perfect, large windows facing Main Street, plenty of space for both a shop area and a kitchen. It would need a proper baker's oven, of course, and some renovations. "That sounds expensive," Amelia observed. "It would be an investment," Kyle corrected. "One I believe would pay off in time. I've been saving for years, looking for the right opportunity. This feels right." "And what would you expect in return?" Amelia asked directly. "Would this be a loan? Would you want ownership of the bakery?" Kyle considered this. "I was thinking more of a partnership. I provide the capital for the building and equipment, you provide the expertise and run the day-to-day operations. We share the profits." "A partnership," Amelia repeated, turning the idea over in her mind. "And what do you know about running a bakery?" "Nothing," Kyle admitted with a laugh. "But I know about business. Before I came west, I worked in my father's shipping office. I can keep books, manage inventory, handle the business side while you focus on what you do best, creating extraordinary bread." Their food arrived, and as they ate, Kyle shared more of his background. His father had been a successful businessman in San Francisco, his mother a French immigrant who had passed her love of good food to her son. After his parents died in a ferry accident when he was 25, Kyle had found himself restless, eventually selling his share of the family business to his uncle and heading east to find something that felt more authentic. "I never quite fit in that world," he explained. "The suits, the endless meetings, the focus solely on profit. I wanted something real." He smiled ruefully. "Though I'll admit, I never imagined ending up as a cowhand." "And now you want to be a baker?" Amelia asked with a raised eyebrow. "I want to be your partner," Kyle clarified, his gaze holding hers. "In whatever capacity you'll have me." The weight of his words hung between them, loaded with meaning beyond business. Amelia felt her cheeks warm as she realized he was offering more than financial backing. "Kyle, we've known each other for such a short time," she said softly. "I know," he acknowledged. "And I'm not asking for any decisions beyond the bakery tonight. But I will say this: I've never met anyone like you, Amelia. Your passion, your dedication to your craft, your willingness to bring something special to a town that didn't even know it needed it. These are rare qualities." Amelia was touched by his words. "And what about your job at the ranch? How would this partnership work if you're out with the cattle?" "I've already spoken with Mr. Maxwell," Kyle revealed. "He's been looking to promote one of the younger hands to my position anyway. If this venture goes forward, I'd leave the ranch and focus entirely on the bakery." Amelia sat back, stunned by the extent of his commitment. "You've thought this through?" "I have," Kyle confirmed. "But ultimately, the decision is yours. I won't pressure you." By the time they finished their meal, Amelia had asked dozens of practical questions about the potential partnership, all of which Kyle answered patiently and thoroughly. His business acumen was evident, as was his genuine enthusiasm for her bread. As he walked her back to her current bakery under a canopy of stars, Amelia made her decision. "I'd like to see the space on Main Street," she said. "If it's as promising as you believe, then yes, I'd like to enter into this partnership with you." Kyle's smile was radiant in the moonlight. "You won't regret it, Amelia. I promise you that." Acting with surprising speed, Kyle arranged a meeting with Mayor Hartwell the very next morning. The storefront was indeed ideal, spacious, with large windows and a location that guaranteed foot traffic. The back room was large enough for a substantial kitchen, and there was even a small apartment upstairs that would provide Amelia with living quarters. Over the next month, the building underwent a transformation. Kyle hired the best carpenter in town to build custom counters and shelving, and sent away to Portland for a state-of-the-art brick oven that arrived in pieces on the stagecoach and was assembled by a specialist. Amelia was consulted on every decision, from the layout of the kitchen to the design of the sign that would hang outside. Morgan and Evans Artisan Bakery. During this time, Amelia continued to operate from her original location, but word had spread after the Harvest Festival. Where once she had struggled to sell a few loaves a day, she now regularly sold out by noon. Kyle spent his days overseeing the renovation but made time each afternoon to help her clean up and close shop. Their partnership evolved naturally, with Kyle's business sense complementing Amelia's baking expertise. They developed an easy rhythm of working together, anticipating each other's needs and respecting each other's domains. And with each passing day, Amelia found herself looking forward more and more to the moments when their hands would accidentally brush, or when Kyle would make her laugh with stories from his ranching days. By early December, the new bakery was ready. The grand opening was scheduled for December 15th, just in time to capture the holiday season trade. The evening before, Kyle and Amelia stood in the completed shop, admiring what they had created together. "I can hardly believe this is real," Amelia said, running her hand along the smooth wooden counter. "Believe it," Kyle replied, standing beside her. "Tomorrow, the people of Pendleton will line up to taste the best bread in Oregon Territory." Amelia turned to him, overcome with gratitude. "None of this would have happened without you, Kyle. You took a chance on me when no one else would." "Best decision I ever made," he said softly, his eyes holding hers. In that moment, with the scent of fresh paint and new wood surrounding them and the promise of tomorrow hanging in the air, Amelia felt an overwhelming urge to close the small distance between them. As if reading her thoughts, Kyle stepped closer, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "Amelia," he whispered, "I need to tell you something before tomorrow changes everything." Her heart hammered in her chest. "Yes. I didn't just invest in your bakery because I believed in your bread. I invested because I believe in you. These past weeks, working alongside you, getting to know you, I've fallen in love with you." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The words she'd been afraid to acknowledge even to herself were now spoken aloud. "I don't expect you to feel the same," Kyle continued, his thumb gently caressing her cheekbone. "But I needed you to know before we open these doors tomorrow. Whatever happens with the bakery, my feelings won't change." Amelia placed her hand over his. "Kyle Evans, you are the most remarkable man I've ever met. You tasted my bread and built me a bakery, but more importantly, you believed in me when I was beginning to doubt myself." She smiled up at him. "How could I not fall in love with you too?" The joy that spread across Kyle's face was worth every hardship she'd endured since coming to Pendleton. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle, questioning kiss. Amelia responded with a certainty that surprised even herself, her arms wrapping around his neck as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and smiling. "Well," Kyle said, his voice husky, "that's a promising start to our partnership." "Indeed it is," Amelia agreed, reluctantly stepping back. "But we should probably save further discussions until after tomorrow's opening. We have an early start." Kyle nodded, though he kept hold of her hand. "You're right, as usual. I'll walk you up to your new apartment." The next morning, Amelia rose before dawn to begin baking in her magnificent new oven. Kyle joined her shortly after, helping to carry ingredients and following her instructions as they prepared for the opening. By the time they were ready to unlock the doors at 8 o'clock, the display cases were filled with golden loaves, sweet rolls, and pastries. To their astonishment, a line had already formed outside, stretching halfway down the block. Mayor Hartwell stood at the front, ready to make the ceremonial first purchase. "I told you," Kyle whispered to Amelia as they prepared to open. "They just needed to understand what makes your bread special." The opening day was a resounding success. By noon, they had sold nearly everything, and Amelia had to quickly prepare more dough for the afternoon. Kyle managed the front of the shop with natural charm, describing Amelia's techniques to curious customers and keeping track of sales in a leather-bound ledger. That evening, exhausted but exhilarated, they counted their earnings more in one day than Amelia had made in her best week at the old location. "This calls for a celebration," Kyle declared, producing a bottle of champagne he'd apparently hidden in the storeroom. "To Morgan and Evan's Artisan Bakery and to us." They toasted their success, sitting on flour sacks in the kitchen, too tired to even go upstairs to the apartment. As they sipped the bubbly wine, Kyle took Amelia's hand. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," he said, suddenly serious. "It might seem rushed, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Amelia felt her pulse quicken. "What is it?" "Amelia Morgan, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I know we've only known each other a short while, but I love you, and I want to build a life with you, not just a bakery." Tears of joy sprang to Amelia's eyes. "Yes, Kyle. Yes, I'll marry you." They were married on New Year's Day, 1879, in a small ceremony at the town church, with Mayor Hartwell serving as a witness. Amelia wore a simple cream-colored dress with a bouquet of winter greenery, and Kyle looked handsome in a new suit ordered from Portland. Their bakery continued to thrive through the winter and into spring, becoming a gathering place for the community. Amelia expanded her offerings, introducing Pendleton to French pastries and Italian focaccia, all made with the same attention to quality and tradition as her bread. Kyle managed the business side with efficiency and innovation, even starting a delivery service to outlying ranches. By their first anniversary, Morgan and Evan's Artisan Bakery was the most successful food establishment in Pendleton. They had hired 2 assistants, young women eager to learn Amelia's techniques, and were considering expanding to offer light lunches as well. That spring, as they celebrated the bakery's success, Amelia shared news that would change their lives once again. She was expecting their first child. "A baker in training," Kyle said with delight, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "Or perhaps a business manager like his father," Amelia suggested with a smile. "Either way, the luckiest child in Oregon," Kyle declared, kissing her tenderly. Their son, Thomas, was born in late October 1880, a healthy, robust baby with Kyle's blue eyes and Amelia's auburn hair. The bakery closed for 2 weeks the first time since its opening as the new parents adjusted to their expanded family. When they reopened, customers were delighted to find baby Thomas sleeping in a basket behind the counter, watched over alternatively by his proud parents. The bakery became even more of a community hub, with mothers bringing their own children in to coo over the baby while purchasing their daily bread. As Thomas grew, so did the business. By his first birthday, they had expanded into the adjacent storefront, adding a small cafe area where customers could enjoy coffee and pastries at marble-topped tables. Kyle's business acumen proved invaluable as they navigated the complexities of growth, while Amelia's unwavering commitment to quality ensured their reputation remained stellar. In the spring of 1882, they welcomed a daughter, Eleanor, completing their family. Kyle built a comfortable house on the outskirts of town, with a spacious kitchen where Amelia could experiment with new recipes on her days away from the bakery. The town of Pendleton grew alongside the Evans family and their bakery. The arrival of the railroad in 1884 brought new residents and visitors, many of whom were directed to Morgan and Evans' artisan bakery as a must-visit establishment. Amelia's bread had become famous throughout the region, with travelers sometimes purchasing extra loaves to take home to distant towns. On the 5th anniversary of the bakery's opening, Kyle surprised Amelia with a journal he had kept since they first met. In it, he had documented his impressions of her bread, their growing relationship, the challenges and triumphs of the bakery, and his deepening love for her and their children. "I never told you," he confessed as she leafed through the pages with tears in her eyes, "but the moment I tasted your bread, I knew." "Knew what?" Amelia asked. "That I had found something extraordinary, the bread, yes, but more importantly, the woman who made it. Something inside me recognized you, Amelia, as if my heart had been waiting for you all along." Amelia closed the journal and kissed him tenderly. "And to think, all those years ago, I was ready to give up because no one would buy my bread." "Thank goodness I was hungry that day," Kyle said with a smile. "Thank goodness you recognized what was special when you tasted it," Amelia corrected, wrapping her arms around him. "The best decision I ever made was building you that bakery," Kyle murmured against her hair. "No," Amelia disagreed, looking up at him with eyes full of love. "The best decision was becoming your partner in business and in life." As the years passed, Morgan and Evans' artisan bakery became an institution in Pendleton. Their children grew up learning both the art of baking from their mother and the skills of business management from their father. Thomas showed an aptitude for baking from an early age, developing his own specialties by the time he was a teenager. Eleanor, meanwhile, inherited her father's head for figures and helped with the books from the age of 12. The town changed with the times, the wild frontier gradually giving way to a more settled existence as the 19th century drew to a close. Through it all, the bakery remained a constant, adapting when necessary but never compromising on the quality and tradition that had made it successful. In 1898, 20 years after Kyle had first tasted Amelia's bread, they handed over the day-to-day operations to Thomas and his wife, Catherine. Eleanor, who had married the son of a local banker, remained involved in the financial side of the business while raising her own family. Kyle and Amelia didn't retire completely. They still came to the bakery most days, with Amelia offering guidance on particularly challenging recipes, and Kyle sharing his wisdom about customer relations. But they also took time to travel, visiting San Francisco to see Kyle's childhood home and even venturing east to Boston, where Amelia showed him the neighborhood where she had grown up. On cool mornings, they could often be found sitting at their favorite table in the corner of the cafe, sharing coffee and fresh pastries, watching with satisfaction as new generations of Pendleton residents discovered the joy of truly exceptional bread. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Amelia asked one such morning, her hand resting comfortably in Kyle's, both of them now showing the silver in their hair and lines of experience around their eyes. Kyle smiled, the same warm smile that had captured her heart all those years ago. "Not in detail, no, but I knew from the moment I tasted your bread that I had found something worth building a life around." He squeezed her hand. "The bakery, yes, but mostly you, Amelia, always you." And as they sat together, surrounded by the legacy of their partnership, the thriving business, their grown children, the community they had helped shape, Amelia reflected that sometimes the most unexpected ingredients could create the most perfect recipe. A woman with unusual bread, a cowboy with an appreciative palate, and the courage to build something new together. These were the elements of a love that, like her sourdough starter, had only grown richer and more complex with time. In the years that followed, their grandchildren learned the stories of how Morgan and Evans' artisan bakery began, how their grandmother had made bread no one would buy, until their grandfather tasted it and built her a bakery. The tale became family legend, passed down through generations, a testament to the power of recognition, belief, and love that arrives in the most unexpected moments. And though Pendleton continued to grow and change with the passing decades, the principles established by Amelia and Kyle, quality without compromise, respect for tradition while embracing innovation, and above all, a passion for creating something that brings joy to others, remained at the heart of the bakery that had begun with a single loaf of bread and the man who understood its value.